Celeste Warren, and I lead Merck's Global Diversity and Inclusion Center of Excellence. So I am very, very happy to be here. I'm happy that you all are here. And we're going to have just I'm going to go through a few slides and talk about quiet quitting. And is this really an option for us? And by us, I mean us. And then what I really want to do is make sure that we have a Q&A at the end. So I apologize in advance, it's 6 after, and I'm supposed to finish and clear out for the next speaker by 2:45. So I'm going to rush by the slides because the important part is that we have a conversation and a dialogue. Sound okay? All right. So what I'm going to take you through is what is quiet quitting. We've all heard about it. It's just erupted on social media. And then I want to talk a little bit about implications in the workplace for quiet quitting. And what does it mean for all of us as diverse employees? And what are your options? So we're going to talk a little bit about these 4 things. The first is, what is quiet quitting? What is it? I mean, we've heard it on social media. And when I had to laugh when I first saw the term, and I looked it up. And I said, well, shoot, they got a name for that now? I just call it taking a day. But it's remaining in your workplace while not actively going above and beyond. Going above and beyond, the weekends, the nights, putting in extra assignments, putting in those extra works. And this concept of quiet quitting is resonating because during the time of the pandemic, we all were shuttered, most of us were shuttered in place. We had a quiet time to reflect, time to think about ourselves, and reflect on ourselves and what we wanted to do with our lives. And so a lot of those questions were resonating with all of us. And during that time, people started thinking about the role that they were playing in their organizations, their careers, and how they were or were not feeling valued in the workplace. And so that's the term that came up, quiet quitting. But what does it really mean? You remember Big Red? How many of y'all remember Big Red from that movie? What it really means is my office hours, say it with me, are 9 to 5. And that's really what it means, basically. I'm not doing anything more than what I need to do to collect my paycheck. But there's implications to quiet quitting in the workplace. So let's just talk a little bit first about the instant an organization has employees who are quiet quitting. There's a high turnover rate. Just announcement after announcement after announcement. Turnover rate, people leaving the organization in large amounts. Low retention rates. High absenteeism. If they're not quitting, leaving the organization, it's, their grandmother on 5 sides has died 5 times and they're taking days off. High absenteeism in the workplace. Low scores on employee opinion surveys. So we know that most companies take some type of employee surveys to understand and get a pulse on the culture. And when you see a propensity for low scores across the landscape, across the employee population, that's another example. Complaints by customers is another example when you start seeing complaints because they're not giving their energy into the customers. Low engagement of employees and low productivity. And it starts to eventually show up in revenue and your business performance. What inclusive organizations do, on the flip side, they recruit and hire from all dimensions of diversity fairly. They provide opportunities for everyone to develop and train for different roles, whatever their aspirations might be. They embrace a flexible work arrangement and work environment. It's not about FaceTime. It's not about you have to be in the office building all the time. It's not about bricks and mortar. It's more about IT and technology and being able to do your job from anywhere. The organization and culture honors all employees for their experiences as well as their skills and education. You've heard of skills first. Some of you have heard of 110. But looking at a person's their whole self, their skills, their experiences, their culture, and their functional capabilities. to really look at and make them feel valued in the workplace. When looking for talent, they consider employment sites that cater to diverse workforces. They don't just go to the same old, expecting to get diverse employees. They cater, they come to ELC, they come to various different events in the diverse community so they can actively recruit diverse employees. And then they train, very importantly, from a systemic standpoint, they train HR teams, managers, and leaders how to work, how to eliminate biases in all of the talent and HR practices, and all of the management processes, as much as you can. We all heard that we've all been through unconscious bias training. So, but how do you eliminate it? Because when your biases start to seep into how you're making decisions around people in the workplace, that's where it becomes a problem. So all of that, talking about the organization, but what does it mean for all of us as diverse employees when we think about quiet quitting? And how do we reconcile quiet quitting with what most of us have been told as we were growing up? If you were like in my household, my father was one of the first black teachers in the region, and first black principals. And so there were things that he told us as we were growing up. I have growing up with four other siblings. How many of you heard some of this? You have to work twice as hard to get half as far, right? That may work for them, but that don't work for us. And we can't get away with that. But that's how these things are passed down from generation to generation. We have to work twice as hard to get half as far. That's not going to work for us. You got to put in the time. You got to put in extra time if you want to get ahead. And this is drummed into our psyche. Growing up, this is what we saw. We saw our parents, many of us, our grandparents, our aunts, our uncles, exhibiting that behavior and that mindset. And it was drummed in all of us from babies all the way up. And it's hard to reconcile quiet quitting with this. But all of us have felt that way. All of us have felt undervalued. All of us have felt that our organization just didn't really care about us. And we've had that desire, to just do the quiet quitting. But can we really? Can we really do that? And what are my options when I feel like quiet quitting? What can I do? When I feel like I'm not being valued, when I don't get that second, third assignment, when I don't get that second or third promotion, or they pass me over in that job, the first thing that you want to do is shut it down. That's natural. That's a natural reaction. But what are some of our options? I believe in empowerment. I believe in not allowing someone to, we say in church, don't allow someone to steal your joy. But how do we do that? What can we do? One of the things that we need to make sure that we are doing is owning our career journey. And when I mean owning it, a lot of companies say, well, it's employee initiated and manager supported and this contract and okay, that's all good and all well and good. But we all know that if we wait for our manager sometimes to have that employee development discussion with us, or wait for our manager to have that discussion around career aspirations, we might be waiting a long time. And so we have to take control of it. And sometimes, that's something I'm going to share at the end. I call it the sweet spot, employment sweet spot. But we have to plan our career journey. And it's simply, just to put it very simply, it's where have you been, where are you now, and where do you want to go? And some people say, where do you want to be in 5 years? And I don't believe in putting a time frame on anything. I believe in just saying, here's where I am now, that's where I want to be, those are the experiences that I want to have. And if that experience is getting to the next level, or getting to be a CEO, or starting your own company, whatever that aspiration is, start your journey. Understand what it is that you do well now. Understand what your skills are, your capabilities. Understand what some of your opportunities are for development, and work on it and plan it. Build your skills and your assessment. Do your assessment, build them, and then look and understand the organization. Not the organization as it exists today. Not your industry as it exists today. But what are they going to be looking for in the future? Getting out ahead of it. What skills and capabilities are they going to need in the future? In our company 5, 6, 7 years ago, they didn't think a lot about digital and data and all of that. And that's now just blowing up. Technology is just blowing up. And so that's what you want to do. Five years ago, start thinking about, well, and research, what do they need in the future? So I can understand how I need to course correct as far as the capabilities that I need. So that's one of the ways that you approach it. Your to-do list. Assess your skills. Commit to continuous learning. Whether the company pays for it or not. Commit to continuous learning. Keep yourself relevant to the organization. There's a saying that they used to say, you may have already heard it, in talent discussions with leaders behind those closed doors. The phrase they'll say is, if you were on a boat or on an island, who is it that you would want on the island with you? And usually that's a term for, they're a workhorse, or they have strong skills, they know what they're doing, they don't need a lot of supervision, they can shake fog, they can do all these things, and they say, yeah, if I was on an island and I can only pick 10 people, I want her, or I want him. So you have to make sure that you are the person that they say that about. Now, because of the skills and the capabilities that you have, and the experiences that you have. You also want to have a clear understanding of how you are viewed by your manager, by the management team, his peers, his or her peers. You want to understand that. And the reason why you want to understand that is because if it isn't a match, if they don't view you and value you, then it might be time for you to vote with your feet and seek some other employment. Because you are committed to continuous learning, you're committed to building your skills and your capabilities, and if the organization isn't committed to that as well, then it's not a mutually inclusive, beneficial relationship. Update your resume to tell your story. You've got to have a good resume. In fact, some of us make the mistake of, we get a nice job, a great opportunity, and we don't update our resume for the whole time that we're in that job. You should be constantly updating your resume. Constantly updating it with the different experiences and assignments and accomplishments that you've had. Always. Don't just get in a job and say, whoo, I made it. And you're done. Constantly keeping yourself relevant. Develop a presence on social media. You guys are all on social media, right? Raise your hand if you're not on social media in some way, shape, or form. You are not on social media. You're not on LinkedIn?
Oh, LinkedIn.
Okay, that's social media. That's it. All right. In this day and age, it's such a integral part of the recruiting process. You have to get on social media. That's how you build your network, especially if you're like me and you're an introvert. It is our best friend, social media, because we don't go nowhere. We can just get on and just do our little virtual interviews and be happy about it. But you got to have a presence on social media to try to build your professional network. Coming to events like the Mid-Level Manager Symposium, meeting new people, building a network, because you're going to talk with each other. The people that you meet here, when you come next year and the year after, and you see at different conferences, they're going to be your network. And some of them may be your personal board of directors, may grow to that type of relationship. And as you hear about different opportunities to build your learning and your your continuous learning and build your skills and capabilities in different conferences and different opportunities, this external network that you have is going to help you. So having a network is so very, very important. It's not about just what you do. And you've all heard this before. It's not about just what you do. You aspire to get into the C-suite. It's also about the networking. It's about, God forbid, it's about some of the politics as well. But you can't just put your head down and just do the work. You have to be aware of the organization. They call it, savvy. This is what I call the employment sweet spot. And the reason why I like this is because, I have many years in human resources. And I would counsel colleagues about if there's not overlap in this circle, then you need to ask yourself if this is the place for you. And people will be shocked. We're behind closed doors and like, oh, I thought HR was supposed to try to talk people into staying. And it's like, I talk people into being happy. And that's what it's all about. So your skills and capabilities is one circle. What is it that you do very, very well, your functional skills? What is it that you do well? And then you have your passions. What is it that you like to do? What is it that brings you joy? What is it that you're passionate about? And yes, sometimes those aren't the same thing. And then what is your organizational responsibilities or the organizational needs? And if those three circles, when they overlap, that's your employment sweet spot. You're doing something that you have the skills and capabilities to do, you're passionate about it, and the organization needs it. I've had that sweet spot, I've been blessed to have it in several different roles. Not all roles, but several different roles. The role I'm in today, in this diversity and inclusion role, it's something that it plays to my strengths, my skills and capabilities. I'm passionate about it. And yes, the organization needs it. They don't even know how badly they need it, but they need it. But this basically, that overlap is your employment sweet spot. And if those circles are not overlapping at some point, they're not going to all overlap at the same time. But if they're not overlapping at some point, then you have to ask yourself, okay, what do I need to do to course correct? What do I need to do to make sure that I'm not quiet quitting in this organization that I'm in right now? What is it that I need to think and think about and what's not working? What in those three circles isn't working? It might be the right organization and the right, your passions, but your skill set, maybe you're not in the job that you want. Maybe it's you're in the job, you have the skills and capabilities, but you're not passionate about it. But the organization needs that skill set. But whatever you do, have that conversation with yourself. And also seek out either a mentor, a sponsor, an advocate, a buddy, a colleague, someone from that network that I talked about, but talk to someone about it. Because we can't afford to quiet quit. We just can't. People are watching us, people are observing us, they're looking at us, and unfortunately the bias does exist. All the isms exist in organizations. We're trying to work systemically to get rid of them, putting actions of equity in place. But we cannot afford to quiet quit, not for a long period of time. And believe me, there are days when I definitely have said, you know what, I need a time out. We used to call it a mental health day. That's what it was, a mental health day. And believe me, I needed to take those. But quiet quitting for a long period of time, it just doesn't work. It just does not work because we're being assessed by people, and sometimes you don't even know you're being assessed. You don't even know who's looking at you and observing you. And then those conversations go into the talent discussions. Oh, I saw so-and-so and so-and-so, and they didn't really look too happy or energized. Now, what that has to do with your skills and capabilities in the discussion, nothing. But they're watching. They're watching employees. And so my candid needed advice and counsel, we're going to let's get into some Q&A, because I wanted to make sure I had at least 15, 20 minutes for it. But my counsel is explore and find your employment sweet spot, because it's in there. It's in you, your skills, your passions, and find the organization that's going to value you where those circles will overlap a little bit. Does that make sense? All right, now let's get into some Q&A. Questions? Yep, there's a microphone, right?
I don't need that. I think we're small enough. John Ferguson with Nassar. I lead the HR function there. And so quiet quitting is something that's top of mind. I'm curious if there's a lot of HR professionals in this room. But if you say quiet quitting is not for us, not really an option, I also look at it from the notion of setting boundaries, but also rejecting hustle culture. And I think there's a place where that can be fine. But I think everyone that came to this conference has a desire for elevation. So I think it depends on what outcomes you're looking for. Because I also look at leading human capital, there are some people that I would call, you want them to be steady Eddies. Everyone can't get the promotion. And so it's just interesting. I'm curious to hear your response to that, because I do think some quiet quitting isn't necessarily that you aren't doing your job. It's just not, you're not going above and beyond. You're not doing the hustle culture. You have no desire to go up this corporate ladder or do X, Y, and Z. But again, I think everyone here has a desire to do that. So what are your reactions to that? My reactions, I'm losing the question in there. So the question is, you said it's not for us. Who is it possibly for? Them. No, when I say it's not for us, I'm just being realistic. Okay, in the workplace, there are people that are evaluating us, and there are two standards, two sets of rules, right? And you know, let's be honest. You guys all came here because you don't want to hear this. You want to hear the truth. And yes, we all aspire to advance our careers, most of us. But when we say quiet quitting, if you want to aspire to advance your career, you have to put in the 120%. You got to get your hustle on. Because if you don't, then they are going to take the jobs from you. I agree with you there. I think my point is, I don't always see, I think quiet quitting could be for some people, it could be for some of us, but we don't have that desire for elevation in the world and the career. Well, the reason why, okay, I see what your point is. So, it's not, quiet quitting is not just about, I want to elevate my career. Because you could lose your job quiet quitting. We could lose our job quiet quitting. Because in this day and age, unfortunately, as much as we are trying to create an equitable work environment, it does not exist today. And I'm just being real. It does not exist today. We're fighting, and we're putting in the fight. There's colleagues, all of you in the part of D&I councils and all of that. They're doing what you can do. And we're going to continue to do that work. It's an analogy that I use about the three people that are looking over the fence, and they're all standing on one rock in the first illustration. The second illustration, they got one person has 3 rocks and 2 rocks and one, and then the final one, the fence is gone. We're trying to do that work to pull that fence down, which in my analogy, the fence is all the isms, the racism, sexism, homophobia, xenophobia, etc. So we're trying to do that work, but we're not there yet. We're in that second frame where we're doing the acts of equity, where we have employee resource groups. We send all of us to different conferences. We go to leadership training that specializes for women or for persons of color, or etc. So we're putting those actions in place because we're trying to get to, on the other side of the rainbow, the equality. But we're not there yet. And so while we are there, we have to, while we're in that space, we have to be aware of what's going on around us. The rules that are those unspoken rules that some folks grew up with knowing, and we didn't. I come from a small steel mill town in western PA. And if you didn't get out, you were either in jail or getting ready to get there. And that was our reality. And so I didn't grow up with my parents talking about stocks and bonds and what's happening on the stock market and all of that. I didn't grow up that way. And so when I came into corporate America, it was a shock to me out of school. Shock. It was like, wow, look what's going on, right? And so what I mean is we need to be aware that for us, quiet quitting, just doing the 9 to 5, may not be good enough for us to even keep our jobs in an area, in a time when companies are downsizing, the pyramid is flattening, they're flattening their structures, and it's 3, 4, 5 people with master's degrees fighting for entry-level positions. So that's what I mean from that perspective. When I talk about quiet quitting, it's not just about aspirations, it's about we want to be able to put food on the table for our children. That's just my opinion. Oh, hi.
Question. My name is Janet Bissay. I'm product director at Square Advanced Oncology Business. And so my question, as representative of millennial generation, and I also speak for Gen Z, being under 30, I think our mentality and challenges have so very different. I think the more and more we hustle, acknowledging what many have done to remove barriers that allows us to go to complain about the next thing. I can't help but wonder, we're already working so hard to achieve and elevate. When do I have the chance to embrace that joy? When do I have the chance to gain those experiences? If I'm constantly hustling, how do I create that boundary and have a life balance? And so to the point that was made on hustle culture, I think that's the piece where there's this revolution taking place, where we're asking ourselves, is this really what I want to define success and be happy? Which speaks to the point we talked about the overlap. And so I guess mine's more common. But I just think there's this shift happening when you think about 5 different generations being in this corporation, where there's one mindset taking place where, for us, I think we're trying to understand, why can't we fight more? Why can't we keep fighting, challenge it, and accelerate the work we're doing from a DNI perspective?
I think the answer is keep fighting. I don't think the answer is why. I don't think the question is why can't we? My question is why aren't you? Right? Keep doing it. Because it's going to take all of this. This didn't happen overnight. It's not going to be fixed overnight. We have to keep doing it. It's a marathon. And it's sprint sometime, and then it's jog. But it's a marathon. And we have to keep fighting, and keep fighting, and keep fighting. Because it's just like the analogy I use sometimes is mowing a lawn. You can't mow a lawn once and expect the grass is just going to stay cut. No, it's going to grow back up. Because people, we're talking centuries of behavior, mindsets, beliefs that we're trying to eradicate. And it's going to happen, it's not going to happen through osmosis. There are a lot of things that are on our side, in the United States in particular. I can't wait till the latest 2020 census data comes out, because it's going to put the fear of God into some people. Because there's a reading that white men may be in the minority for the first time in the history of this United States. And so there's things that are going to be happening that are going to cause us to continue to keep fighting, but the world is changing. And so there are things that are on our side as we grow. Ethnic, racial, race and ethnicity, women. We're becoming the majority soon. And so in your lifetime. And so we have to keep fighting. And I just keep going back to that employment sweet spot. I'm going to leave that up. Because for me, there were periods in my life when I had to reevaluate. Those periods were August 30th, 2001, July 11th, 2003. That's when my 2 children were born. And at that point, it was like, it's all working. Because I kept going through, every time I came into work, I was like, okay, I became very efficient. Because if you were wasting my time, I looked at that as, this is time I can be with my child. You are wasting my time. What do you want done? When do you want it done? Why isn't it done? But just keep thinking about this and keep fighting, especially your generation, especially the under 30s. We're trying. I'm not going to tell you what generation I'm in. We're trying, and we're gonna keep on trying, and we're gonna keep on, because we know you all are looking at us and saying, what are you leaving us with? Good question, good thought. Yes?
I use like the,
No, I can't.
typically do that one voice.
You're using your cool club voice.
I use my very voice.
Oh! All right
So, is this being recorded sometime?
now. I have no idea.
Yes.
Oh, it is, okay.
I'll probably just master some things I say.
Okay.
I do like maybe building onto what she said, even thinking about what he said. Some people are quite witty because they like, don't like the job. But then there's some people, and I would imagine a lot of us, are like obviously. So it may be that I can go work with 50%, but compared to peers, that's like 5%. And then also like there's other cultures where work is like on 5.
I still can't. Yeah.
There's other cultures where work is number 5. There's like after family, after employment, after all these other things. So like I'm just curious because I guess there are a lot of people in HR. What do you think about that? Like because what she said, like we want to get Black joy, we want to take advantage of what other people have done. Of course, the narrative is to keep working harder and harder and harder. That becomes difficult. And then also like some of us are.
Can I stop just for a second? The narrative isn't work harder, harder, harder. It's work smarter, right? I'm saying understand the environment around you, whatever your work environment might be, understand it so you can know what you're facing. And whatever that, your 50% might be better than someone's 150%. But know what's required in the organization for you to reach whatever aspiration it is that you have, whatever it might be. Go ahead.
Maybe a more direct question. That,
Yeah.
Let's say somebody shows up with 50% of their work, the organization thinks it's 150%, and they're happy with that. Are you, I guess, just what are your thoughts as someone in HR if that person says, you know what, I'm willing to do this, I'm not going to like contribute anymore, I'll like meet these standards, I'll work 9 to 5, the company's happy with that, but they're not looking to become the next director or vice president or executive. Any thoughts on that?
It depends on what your aspirations are. It depends on what your aspirations are. If your aspirations are to just be where you are, then, and they view it as 150%, and you know in your heart you're only giving only 50, I've been in those situations as well.
Yeah, I guess what I'm asking is the HR perspective on if somebody's able to do their own goals. It feels like there's an expectation for America where you need to get more and get more and get more. So even if you give 150% expectation next year is 175% expectation after that. So is there a thought process of like employees to just show up, get some percentage, and that allows them to be a lot more and more, but just allow them to show up and contribute to the business in meaningful ways, but still maintain that balance without always having to give more substance.
Can it happen, what you're asking? Yeah, it can happen. Absolutely can. I was going to be cynical and saying SpongeBob SquarePants is the world, but I'm not going to do that. But yeah, it can happen. It can happen. I mean, I've had to step back and when my husband and I were starting a family, and I had to step back and say, okay, what's important to me? My family is important to me. That's always first, always, full stop. But I found myself having a conversation with my boss at the time after my first child, and I said, look, I'm going to work 4 days a week for a period. And then after that period, it was, I'm going to work 4 days in the office, and this is a long time ago, and one Fridays I'm going to work from home. And we just like contracted it. He said to me, Celeste, 4 days from you is 8 days from somebody else. And so at that point, it's like, okay, just judge me on what you and I contracted, what you want done at the end of the year. What are my top 5 priorities? And I'll get those, and that's kind of how you think about it, 50%, 100%. It's basically, what is the organization asking of me? And can I do that while still being able to balance everything? Because sometimes if your passions may be outside of work, right? If you like music, or you like,
You know, there's vocations that aren't in your corporate America, but you like doing. Maybe you're a musician or whatever. And sometimes they don't overlap. Being able to balance all of it, that's a question that we all have to ask ourselves at some period, lots of periods of times in our life. And when you ask that question, then you make a decision. But what I'm saying is that don't just sit in limbo. You know, make a decision. I'm active bias for action. Don't sit in, wring your hands about it for long periods of time when you just become paralyzed, right? Take the reflection, take the time, talk to colleagues, talk to friends about what you think you might be able to do or what you might want to do. Okay? Who was next? I'm sorry. 5 minutes? 5 minutes.
I'm going to try to make my voice work. Is it working? Okay.
I
All right, awesome. And so 2 things, actually. Just as I'm hearing everyone's question, just something that came to mind. So I'm a person that works in HR as well. More on the COE side, so more effectiveness, leadership development, all of that kind of stuff. I think there's like 4 different types of career paths. You have like a people leader, a project leader, manager. You have a SME, and then you have like grow in place. And so what I'm hearing people talk about is like this grow in place one, but there's still a growth that should be happening, but it's in place. And so it's not just like having to go to all of these different things. So that's what I'm hearing people like talk about. So I just wanted to say that as well. But my question is more so on what you're talking about from the burnout side. I think the pandemic has presented good and bad things within the workforce, right? And so I feel like we're talking about mental health more, we're talking about the stressors more, we're talking about this idea of burnout. And so as we look at things like this, how do we balance burnout with career development and career growth as we move up in our careers?
How do you balance burnout as you move up in your career?
Right.
So it's a good question. I'm not a physician, right? I'm not a psychiatrist either, a psychologist. I'll tell you how I do it. When I get to a point where I'm feeling that burnout, I unplug. And luckily, with the grace of God, that unplugging is either through a vacation, I can work myself out of it, a week, 2 weeks, whatever. I haven't needed to take leaves of absence to unplug, to do that, a month or 2 months, something like that. But what I do is I have to unplug. And if I feel that coming on and that burnout, when you're in high stressful jobs, that will happen. You're going to feel it. And the best thing I can say for your mental health, your physical health, is it will manifest itself physically in your body. I just unplug, and I just take myself away from it, and sometimes it's just a couple of days, but for me, that's what I have to do to maintain my sanity.
And how does that affect the body weight?
I don't. I'm talking me. I don't quiet quit. You know why I don't quiet quit? Because of all of you. I can't afford to. I can't afford to give 50% in what I do. Because if I do that, nobody's talking to the CEO about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and being able to accelerate the advancement of Black and brown people. Nobody's talking to them about what are we going to do for women, and multicultural women, because we're the ones that are feeling it. No one's talking to them about the LGBTQ plus community and their needs. So for me, quiet quitting isn't an option. That's why I unplug when I need to and come back fighting. That's just me.
Right, and I can say personally, after
Well, that's crazy.
I know. And I say that to say I just feel like I felt like it somehow was a reflection of performance and muscle. And so I it was like by quitting, we expect to deliver. And so that's our part. It's like I don't even think I have the ability to select. So I continue to expect it to time apart. And I
environment is such like that, I can question if that's an environment that I can be in. I couldn't be in an environment like that. If I couldn't unplug. If I had to work 24/7, I could. You said you're in dancing. Go somewhere else. Come over to Murray. Yes. Right?
Yes, strictly on the visual director, so that's a good question.
All my farm people came in there,
So
all
the
right?
question about how do I find a way to allow myself to do the things that are necessary for me, whether it's public safety, whether it's planning, or a home, or the transportation, like sometimes to the changes that are happening, and how that can manifest itself in what people might observe by quitting, or you're just trying to recharge people's attention. Because they kind of overlap. To some degree, they need to think like someone that they can, I can't even take vacation.
Yeah.
When that's something that you early should do. How does that manifest itself? Because that's also a question I have for schools come to me and say, hey, you know what, Rick, I'm really not here today. But it's not that they're quitting, they just need a
Oh, yeah, I mean, during the time, I just want to be conscious of the next speaker too. We have to, when we're talking and we're having this discussion with our managers, it starts out with what is the contract, what are they expecting of you? What are the outcomes? What are those top 5 or so things that they need you to have accomplished by the end of the year, right? And we have to turn the conversation around from where am I doing it, what time of the day am I doing it. Those don't matter. We have to turn the conversation. And when you're sitting there and you're having this conversation with your manager, it's about what needs to get done. What's the priority? What's strategic? What needs to get done? What projects am I on? What are the main things that you want me to have done by the end of the year? And I will commit to doing that. But it's basically, I want Z. But don't tell me how to go from A to B, B to C, C to D, C. Just tell me you want me to get to Z. And that's we have to have that contracting conversation, that courageous conversation with our managers so they aren't looking at all of the other stuff that is incidental and not the outcomes of my output. That's the conversation we need to be having. And so if we can sit down and have that honest, authentic conversation with the manager to say, what are the outcomes that you're looking for me for this year? And then it's just like, whatever it is, 3 to 5. That's what we focus on. And don't tell me that you want me to be doing something at 5, and this at 7, and this at 8, and don't micromanage me. I assure you, I will get it done. And if that's the type of conversation we need to be having, not in the minutia of the details of where I'm doing it and what time I'm doing it. It's just, this is the results that we want to see. This is what we agreed to, and then this is what we'll accomplish. I have to apologize. My colleague is in the back. She's the next speaker, and I want to make sure that she's set and ready to go. Thank you all. Thank you for this conversation. Thank you for the questions. And I hope you appreciate the candor and, you recorded me and, no. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.